Something strange is happening at Skinwalker Ranch, and tonight, its owner, Brandon Fugal, is finally breaking the silence. For years, the world has watched unexplained lights, radiation spikes, and technology failures play out on television. But now, Brandon claims the public hasn't seen even half of what's really going on. In a sudden announcement, he reveals new evidence, government pressure, and a discovery beneath the mesa that changes everything we thought we knew about the ranch. And if what he's saying is true, then someone has been trying to keep this hidden for a very long time. Subscribe, because this story is just beginning. When Brandon Fugal agreed to a late-night interview on a small independent live-stream channel, nobody expected anything unusual. He'd done hundreds of interviews over the years, always measured, always careful, always respectful of non-disclosure agreements. But on this night, something was different. His voice was tense, his posture stiff, and behind him, viewers noticed something unsettling. The blinds in his office were pulled shut, and two security guards stood just barely visible in the reflection of the glass. Before the host could finish asking the first question, Brandon leaned forward and interrupted. "There are things happening on the ranch we were never meant to understand," he said. His tone carried none of the scientific detachment he'd become known for. "And we've been told to stop digging." Literally, chat messages exploded across the screen. More than 80,000 people tuned in within minutes. Brandon then recounted an event from earlier that month, an excavation near the southern ridge of the mesa. The team had noticed recurring spikes of ionizing radiation, the same kind that had hospitalized crew members in previous seasons. But this time, there was something else. A geometric pattern carved into stone 8 feet below the surface. It wasn't modern tool work, it wasn't erosion, it had symmetry. He paused, swallowing hard. "We transmitted the data to one of our government consultants. They told us to close the site immediately and destroy the documentation." The host blinked in disbelief. Brandon continued. "When we refused, 3 unmarked helicopters flew over the ranch. No transponders, no flight plans. That's not paranoia, that's a violation." He lifted his phone and held it toward the camera. On the screen was a blurry image, a perfectly smooth circular cavity beneath the mesa, surrounded by smaller chambers. "We scanned this cavern. Something metallic is inside," he whispered. The audience went silent. Then he dropped the sentence, "that would trend worldwide within hours. We didn't discover it. Something placed it there." For the first time, Brandon wasn't smiling. He wasn't selling a mystery. He was warning us. In the days following that interview, speculation spread across the internet, but nothing compared to the information Brandon quietly shared with his research team behind closed doors. The object beneath the mesa wasn't just metallic. According to preliminary scans, its alloy composition didn't match any known industrial signature. It reflected electromagnetic pulses in a way that suggested it was designed to be found, but not easily understood. The team scheduled a controlled descent into the cavern. When technicians lowered sensors through a stabilized borehole, the instruments behaved erratically. Cameras glitched, thermal readings inverted from cold to blistering heat in seconds, and for a brief moment, a deep humming vibration rattled the equipment. One of the monitors, usually full of static, flashed a smooth outline, like a sphere inside a cradle. Then, everything went dark. Brandon ordered all gear retrieved immediately. One technician who had been tethered near the borehole surface complained of dizziness. Within hours, his skin reddened and his hair began to fall out in patches. Radiation sickness again, but this time faster, sharper. Unlike any profile the medical team recognized, the object wasn't dormant, it was interacting. That evening, Brandon contacted a federal liaison he'd worked with since the ranch went public. The response was curt: cease all penetration of the mesa and await further instruction. Hours later, the ranch's perimeter sensors detected movement. 2 unmarked SUVs idling near the property line. The drivers remained inside, headlights off, cameras pointed toward the gate. As word spread among the staff, fear took root. This wasn't like the usual UFO sightings or cattle anomalies. This was tactical interest. Someone, somewhere, knew exactly what lay under that stone. "We're not supposed to be digging here," Brandon told his lead physicist. But If we walk away now, we may never know who built it or why it's responding. That night, as the team reviewed the corrupted footage frame by frame, they noticed something impossible. During the static blur, the sphere appeared to move, not physically rolling, but shifting orientation, like an eye turning toward a sound. The room fell silent. For the first time, Brandon wondered if the ranch wasn't protecting a secret, but guarding humanity from it. Within 48 hours of the failed borehole scan, Brandon's inbox filled with messages from agencies he'd never directly interacted with before. They weren't threats, at least not on paper. Instead, they were offers, grants, funding opportunities, partnership programs, all designed to shift control of the research to federal oversight. Every document had the same concerning clause: full custody of all recovered materials. Brandon refused them all. That's when the phones started acting strange. Calls dropped mid-sentence. Texts arrived hours late. Ranch servers logged intrusion attempts from encrypted networks bouncing across continents. "Someone's probing our systems," their cybersecurity consultant muttered, tapping through logs with shaking hands. "They're not learning who we are. They're learning where we're weakest." Meanwhile, activity on the ranch intensified. At 2:13 a.m., motion sensors positioned along the northern fence triggered repeatedly. When security cameras rotated toward the alert, they captured figures, 3 of them, standing perfectly still beyond the property line. Their height, posture, and proportions looked wrong, too stiff, too symmetrical. After 15 seconds, they vanished behind a flash of static. The next morning, Brandon gathered his senior team. He played the footage without commentary. No one spoke. "We're being watched," astrophysicist Travis Taylor finally murmured, "and not just by people." Then came the seismic data. Sensors embedded across the mesa began detecting rhythmic pulses deep underground, consistent, timed vibrations occurring every 6 minutes. They weren't earthquakes, they were signals. When Brandon forwarded the readouts to a classified contact, the reply was chillingly short: "Stop transmitting data." Around this time, rumors began circulating among staff. Stories of ranch workers hearing voices echoing from the cavern during late-night spot checks. Whispers that seemed to speak directly into the mind without air or breath. A geologist reported feeling pressure in his skull, as if his thoughts were being pulled downward toward the mesa. He resigned the next morning. Brandon doubled security, but physical guards couldn't protect against what was happening next. The dreams. Nearly half the crew began waking in the night, sweating, claiming they'd seen a dark chamber with a sphere suspended in a pale blue glow. They described the same faint hum, the same vibration captured by instruments days earlier. Identical nightmares, shared imagery. "I've seen pattern correlation before," Brandon said quietly, pacing the command room, "but I've never seen shared cognition. Something is interacting with us, and it's choosing who." More than ever, the ranch felt alive, like it was studying them back. Behind the mesa, something hidden for centuries was stirring, and the world, without knowing it, was inching closer to awakening it fully. 3 days after the seismic pulses began, the ranch's airspace, normally quiet, became unusually active. Radar picked up a small aircraft circling the mesa at low altitude. It wasn't military, but it wasn't commercial either. The pilot ignored every attempt at radio contact. As Brandon and his security chief watched the feed, the plane banked sharply and descended. Cameras mounted on its underside aimed directly at the excavation site. Within seconds, alarms blared. The ranch's monitoring system detected a sudden spike in microwave radiation emanating from the cavern. The sphere beneath the mesa was reacting to the aircraft's presence. Then, without warning, the plane's lights flickered. Its engine cut out mid-air, and the craft drifted in a slow, controlled spiral before crashing safely into a field 2 miles away. No fire, no explosion. It was as if something guided it down. Federal vehicles arrived on scene before Brandon's team could reach the wreck. Agents sealed the site and confiscated all equipment. The pilot was escorted into an unmarked van and driven away. When Brandon pressed for information, he was told only that aviation protocols had been violated. No further explanation. The next morning, new signs appeared around the perimeter. Restricted flight zone, federal authority. Brandon hadn't requested them. The FAA claimed it was for wildlife preservation. But wildlife doesn't ground planes. That night, ranch instruments caught a faint electromagnetic whisper pulsing from the mesa toward the crash site, a signal too orderly to be natural. Someone or something was communicating, and for the first time, Brandon feared the message wasn't meant for humans at all. The following week tested the ranch more than any single phenomenon ever had. The crew, normally tight-knit and resilient, began to fracture under the strain of sleepless nights, whispering voices, and unexplained health issues. Tempers flared during simple discussions, and arguments erupted over equipment placement, lab access, even meal schedules. Everyone felt it. Something was pushing them. Travis reviewed biometric data from wearable sensors the team had been testing. Heart rates were spiking at random intervals, usually when staff passed directly above the cavern area. Brainwave scans showed brief bursts of activity in regions associated with fear response and dream recall. Whatever lay beneath the mesa wasn't just emitting radiation, it was interacting neurologically. Then there were the compass failures. Every analog compass on the ranch began drifting, pulling toward the same direction, the excavation site. Digital sensors mirrored the anomaly, suggesting a magnetic field shift underground. When geologists tried to model the readings, the simulation showed an impossible shape, like a rotating torus of magnetism forming a containment shell. During a closed-door meeting, Brandon addressed the team. "The ranch has always been strange," he said, "but this is targeted. It's influencing biology, psychology, and magnetism at the same time. Something wants to be noticed." One researcher abruptly stood. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused. "Or it wants to be left alone," she murmured. She left mid-meeting, packed her belongings, and drove away without waiting for her paycheck. As tensions grew, Brandon's trusted ranch manager quietly admitted something odd. Livestock near the mesa had stopped grazing and stood facing the rock formation for hours at a time, staring without blinking, like they were listening. Sleep deprivation hit next. Crew members reported jolting awake at exactly 3:11 a.m. every night. Security logs confirmed it. Motion cameras around the mesa pulsed with static at that exact time, down to the second. "You're all on edge," the government liaison said during a call. "Shut the site down." But when Brandon asked if the government had seen similar patterns elsewhere, the line went silent for a long, uneasy moment before the call disconnected. Late that same night, the ranch's surveillance tower detected movement on the mesa. In infrared, several humanoid heat signatures stood in a semicircle, facing the excavation. They didn't move. They didn't breathe. Their heat signatures weren't biological at all, more like faint electromagnetic outlines. When security teams approached, the figures faded into the rock itself. The next morning, Brandon made an announcement that stunned the crew. Despite escalating danger, despite government warnings, they would continue. "The world doesn't get smaller when you ignore it," he said. "It just gets darker." The team nodded quietly, but no one looked reassured. Whatever was buried beneath the mesa was changing them. And now, the ranch itself seemed to be choosing sides. By the end of the week, the rhythmic seismic pulses had evolved into something more complex. The waveform was no longer a simple beat. It now fluctuated in patterns that resembled data transmission. When the team converted the frequencies into audible range, a low, trembling hum filled the command center. It wasn't random. It rose, fell, and paused with eerie precision, like a message waiting for a response. Their signal analyst isolated the pattern and compared it to Earth-based communications. The spacing didn't match radio chatter, Morse, or sonar, but one thing stood out. The pulses repeated every 42 minutes. Exactly. Nothing in nature keeps time that perfectly. Worse, the pulses intensified whenever a human approached the excavation site. Heart monitors spiked. EEG sensors lit up. It was reacting to proximity, almost like curiosity. One night, around 3:11 a.m., the same minute the crew kept waking, the sensors detected a new anomaly, a faint ticking sound beneath the stone. It resembled metal expanding under heat, but the temperature readings were unchanged. Brandon and his physicist exchanged glances. "It's adjusting," she whispered. The next morning, they attempted to respond by broadcasting a controlled tone back into the cavern. For a moment, the seismic pulses stopped completely. the ranch fell eerily silent. Cameras froze. The wind itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the sphere answered. The return pulse surged with enough force to fry 2 servers and leave every screen flooded with black and white static. Embedded deep in the noise, someone caught a fragment of pattern. 6 repeating symbols outlined in geometric arcs. It wasn't language as we know it, but neither was it meaningless. As Brandon stared at the frozen frame, a chill ran across his shoulders. Whatever was down there wasn't just emitting signals, it was listening and learning. With the pulses escalating, Brandon authorized a second borehole, this time with a fiber optic camera small enough to slip through a crack in the stone chamber wall. The drill descended slowly, guided by precise telemetry, until it reached a hollow pocket beneath the mesa. The feed flickered to life. At first, all they saw was darkness. Then, the camera auto-focused, and the chamber walls came into view. They were perfectly smooth, curved, and reflective, not like cave stone, but like polished alloy. Stranger still, the surfaces were etched with repeating hexagonal patterns, each glowing faintly with a pale blue phosphorescence. As the camera panned downward, the sphere appeared in the center of the chamber, suspended several inches off the floor. It hovered in silent defiance of gravity, rotating just enough to reveal engraved arcs that resembled orbital paths. Every rotation caused the chamber walls to pulse gently, as though in resonance. Suddenly, the live feed jittered. The camera lens fogged from the inside, as if something unseen exhaled. In the control room, temperature sensors spiked plus 10 degrees in seconds. Alarms screamed. Then they heard it, a whisper. It wasn't electronic interference or wind. It was a layered voice, 3 tones speaking simultaneously, forming no recognizable word. Yet every person felt instinctively that it was directed at them. One technician stumbled backward, clutching his chest as if gripped by panic. Another dropped to his knees, hands over his ears, though no external sound registered. The feed snapped to white static. When the screens stabilized, the sphere's blue glow had intensified. The walls now rippled with shifting patterns, reacting like a living membrane. The camera began to melt, literally, its metal casing dripping as if exposed to intense heat, though thermals recorded only mild warmth. Brandon ordered the drill retracted immediately. For the rest of the night, the chamber emitted a slow, rhythmic flash, visible through cracks in the mesa. It pulsed like a heartbeat. For the first time, the team realized something terrifying. They hadn't discovered an artifact. They had awakened a system. Shaken by the chamber's reaction, Brandon halted all drilling operations and ordered a full electromagnetic sweep of the ranch. That's when the readings spiked again, except this time, they didn't originate underground. 3 distinct signals were detected hovering above the mesa, triangular in formation, only visible on specialized radar. Cameras pointed skyward captured nothing but an empty blue sky. Yet, the instruments screamed. When the team tried powering down certain sensors to reduce interference, something responded. Every device rebooted on its own. Tablets flashed unauthorized logins. Security gates opened and closed without input. It was as if the ranch's systems were being tested. Suddenly, the same whispering tone from the chamber returned, but now, through the radio array, layered voices speaking in modulation patterns. Dr. Taylor noted they resembled pulsed star maps. The pulses grew faster the longer the equipment remained disabled, like a warning. When power was restored, the signals faded. The implication was chilling. Whatever was underground did not want to be isolated. That night, ranch animals refused to approach the mesa. Camera traps showed their silhouettes pausing, staring into darkness, then backing away. The sphere beneath the rock chamber dimmed, as if going dormant. Brandon realized shutting everything down only provoked a reaction. Observing, not interfering, might be the only safe path. But then, something happened that forced his hand. At 3:14 a.m., the underground sensors activated on their own. The chamber pulsed bright enough to illuminate cracks in the mesa, visible from the valley below. Brandon knew secrecy was no longer possible, and so, in a controlled interview the next morning, he made his announcement. "We've confirmed a non-human technology below Skinwalker Ranch. For the safety of the public, we're no longer calling this a legend. We're calling it evidence." The world froze, and the ranch hummed quietly, as if listening.